How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, that is what this show is here for. It is for you to be able to ask any question that you like about politics, and there's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating, there's no ridicule. This is not one of those extremely popular shows where people yell at each other and fight each other. This is not a Jubilee debate where people yell at each other. This is not me trying to own anybody or calling anybody stupid or, calling people fascist or whatever. This is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics. So, if you got any question, let me know. Just hit me up in the chat. Partysaurus, good to see you again. So, yeah, I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. There's no such thing as a dumb question here on my channel. And, maybe you don't feel comfortable asking certain questions because you're worried that it would make you look more conservative or liberal than you actually are. And so people, you don't want to ask these questions in public. Maybe you don't want to ask anybody in public because you're worried that it'll make you seem uninformed or uneducated. Maybe you can't ask certain questions where you live because people will think you're some sort of libtard cuck. Or maybe you can't ask certain questions because people will think you're some sort of MAGA fascist. Party sources have seen both sides of the Texas Dems can't be arrested. Is it just posturing? So there's no authority by which the Texas police can arrest the Democrats that are out of state because they don't have any jurisdiction. I also doubt that they have done anything illegal, even according to state law. The concern, though, is that the FBI, under control of Trump lackey Kash Patel, could potentially just sick the FBI on them for no fucking reason. There's the whole thing about, threatening them with fundraising off of this, stunt. And then that could be used as, bribery charges or something. And then the FBI could go after that. This is the issue with having a fascist government, is that there's no rule of law necessarily. It is just when the president says arrest somebody, whether they've done anything bad or not, the president gets what he wants. So, you know, yeah. I hope that was informative, Party Source. And welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics without fighting. I don't fight. I don't debate. I'm not here to call people stupid or anything. Daniel Gallion says, do you think Trump Jr. and Hunter Biden are both in bed with Russia? I've seen no evidence that Hunter Biden is in bed with Russia, but all of the Trumps are heavily invested in Russia. Thorns Duchy says, did you hear that Trump wants to keep FEMA money from states who are boycotting Israel? Yeah, that doesn't seem, like a good move. Like if your state gets hit by a hurricane, but you don't think that we should be sending money to the Israeli government because they're doing a genocide against people in Palestine, like, doesn't seem to be like a good one-to-one. Like, those issues aren't related. Maybe there are people in your state who don't believe in boycotting products from Israel. You're just gonna punish them also? It's fucking fascist shit, guys. Triska Fun, hey friends, back at you. So welcome everybody to Ask Me Anything About Politics. Abe says, what's up with Texas and redistricting? So redistricting usually happens every 10 years when we do the census, and it's a way to sort of like rebalance the maps based on where the most people live, because, population changes in certain areas every once in a while. We decided that 10 years is the window for that to happen. But they have decided that they would really like to cheat in trying to win the midterm elections. And so what they're doing is they are redrawing the maps in a way that even if Democrats get 40% of the votes, they would still get zero representation in Congress. And that is, it's terrible. It's gerrymandering, and it is something that the Democratic Party tried to stop when Biden was in office, but the Republican Party refused to vote for it. They even refused to allow a vote on it. They filibustered the Democrats' attempt to get rid of gerrymandering. And so now we are involved in this gerrymandering war between all the various states, where Texas is going to do an off-cycle redistricting, and so then California is going to do an off-cycle redistricting, and then Florida is going to do an off-cycle redistricting, and then Illinois and New York, and the Supreme Court is potentially going to strike down the the Voting Rights Act, and so now all of these southern states can get rid of their majority African American districts. Like, it's a fucking nightmare, I hope that answered your questions, Thorns Duchy. Lil Jit says, thus forcing other states to do the same. Exactly. Fog War Production says, the California-Texas rivalry is a hell of a thing, but to be honest, it's one Texas has already lost. I mean, yeah, no arguments here. Lil Jits, good to see you. He's commenting again, I guess. Carmine says, how weird they got to rig it to win it. Yeah, isn't that weird? HJ says, Trump is the man of lawlessness. That is accurate. The South will rise again says, what's your personal views? My personal views on what? Damon Hightower says, make America great again. Yeah, make America great again by unelecting every single Republican. Han Z Sec 1 Twitch says, thoughts on the new UK adult website laws? I don't know enough about it, unfortunately. I am more of an expert in contemporary American politics than in foreign affairs. Okie dokie bro says, you should stop taking the estrogens, sis. That's what I told your mom last night. The South will rise again says, why are you personally a liberal? There are a lot of reasons why I'm a liberal. If you tell me a specific issue, the South will rise again, then I will happily give you my take on it. Charles DG says, is dignified access to clean water, food, and shelter a human right? And is it political? It is a human right, in my opinion, and it is political because the billionaire class does not want people to have, access to clean water, food, and shelter. They want to put that stuff behind a paywall so that they can increase human suffering and their own power and riches. No one cares says, the hours this guy has wasted on this live is unreal. The hours I wasted on your mom last night is even more unreal. Okie dokie bro says, he's liberal because he likes men. I think men are okay. I think women are okay too. T. Gott says, AMA about politics really means I have no personality. I got a bunch of personality. The South will rise again says, let's take immigration for now. Okay. The Trump administration in its first term and in this term are doing wildly barbaric and immoral things in the name of removing brown people from this country. They have not decreased illegal immigration. They have just made legal immigration harder to do unless you are rich or white. During the first Trump administration, they separated children from their families and then lost the parents somewhere in whatever country. And so now we just have thousands of extra orphans in this country. The Democrats actually try to solve the problem by working on a bill with Republicans in order to address some of the border issues, but also to fix the immigration process. And this is a bill that was written with Republicans, but the Republicans that wrote it ended up voting against it because Donald Trump told them to, so that he could run on immigration as an issue. So the Republican Party isn't trying to solve the problem. They want it to be a problem so they can continue to win elections on this issue going forward, just based on fear-mongering about brown people coming across the border, appealing to racists and people that are just being tricked into thinking that this is a problem when it's not. This is literally the billionaire class telling you that as they are robbing money from you, the reason why you are poor is because of immigrants, when the reality is that you are poor because of billionaires. Thank you for your question, my guy. Thank you for being here. Alrighty. Bentley says, do you like Trump? No, I do not. Height Max says, Israel or Palestine, who deserves that land? I think it's a little bit unproductive to argue about who deserves that land. I think what's most important is to look at where people are living now and get there to be peace right now. Well, we'll say like the borders where they are right now. Nobody else moves. No Israelis are allowed to annex any more territory in Palestine, and we're not going to remove people that are living in Israel who are just trying to have fucking regular ass lives. We're not going to force them to move somewhere else. And Israel, being the more powerful country of the two, needs to start doing the work of healing that relationship. All right. Let's see here. Okie dokie bro says, let's go Trump. Let's go Trump out of my fucking live, because I'm done with your fucking bullshit. Alrighty, Wise Fishes, what's your opinion on NATO's decision to rapidly remilitarize Europe? So, for a long time, America has been sort of like the de facto protector of Western society. But since Trump became elected, he has made it extremely chaotic, and he has been unclear about whether he will honor his Article 2. It's Article 2, I think, right? Article 2, Article 5, it's one of those. Whether he will honor his commitments to protecting European nations with America's military. And so this maneuver to try to demilitarize the globe, Donald Trump is failing at it. And so, because they cannot count on America's military anymore. Now they have to build up their own military, and so now there's going to be just more military in the world, which is, I think, bad for everybody. Thank you, Debate for Anybody. I believe Damon Hightower says Trump is better. That is not a question, and so you're out of here. This guy says, "Wow, you are very Jewish." I'm actually not very Jewish. I'm only a little bit Jewish, but also that's not a question, so you're out of here. All right, Carmine says, would you rather remove Trump or fix the media misinformation climate? Oh, that's a really good question. I guess number one, I would go media misinformation, because if we remove Trump, the problem that got Trump there is still there. If we remove the media misinformation problem, then potentially people will start getting accurate information about what's going on, and then they will start, revolting against the Trump administration. Doom says, does pineapple belong on a pizza? If you like it. South Fork Greg says, do you think the housing market will even calm down whether a Republican or Democrat is in office? So things are different when Republicans are in charge versus when Democrats are in charge, both on the local, state, and federal level. The things that the Trump administration is currently doing is hurting the housing market. It is making it difficult to build new homes. It is making it difficult to refinance because interest rates are so high. And because he is making inflation go up, that is causing the interest rates to remain high, as they were coming down during the Biden administration. Now, is this all leading to some sort of housing market crash? I don't know. But I will say that as layoffs continue, as we lean closer and closer into a recession, as layoffs continue, as inflation continues, we're probably going to start seeing more and more people failing to pay back their mortgages. And that's exactly what precipitated the housing market crisis in 2008. So, yeah, it is a wild and chaotic and dangerous and sad time in America. Angry Long Island Vet says, you guys said there was going to be a recession in 6 months, and it still hasn't happened yet. Would you like to know why that is, Angry Long Island Vet? Comment yes, because if you're not going to listen to what I have to say, then I don't really want to waste my breath. Drew Odinson says, inflation is down, jobs are up. That is wildly inaccurate. Let's see here. Angry Long Island Vet. Okay, so the reason why the recession has not happened on the timeline that we originally predicted is for two reasons. Number one, companies knew that these tariffs are going to get started, so they ordered a whole bunch of inventory from overseas. And so they just filled warehouses with extra merchandise, and it's possible that we are still working through that material now. But we could be out of it. I have no idea. The other reason why it hasn't happened yet is because the tariffs they're on, they're off, they're delayed, they're back on, they're being renegotiated, and so there's no consistency to it. The market doesn't know how to respond to, people that work in finance are always talking about taco, meaning Trump always caves on tariffs. So, the market there's no sell-offs anymore when he announces a new tariff because they don't believe the tariff is going to stay. We are seeing the knock-on effects of the tariffs starting to hit the market with the jobs report that just came out, with inflation going up, and my guess is that it's just going to continue getting worse and worse. Long Island Vet. Torrin Stanford says, "What you think of World War III being higher than ever?" Again, I still don't think that World War III is going to happen. You know, I am worried. I still believe that global tensions and instability and fighting is going to continue, but I don't think it's going to escalate to World War III. Still, East Coast says, "Why can't liberal people be happy? All they do is look for the negatives and everything." I don't think that that's accurate. East Coast. User a bunch of numbers says, jobs are up. Dude, I had to apply to 50 jobs before I even got an answer. Yeah, completely agree with that. Debate Anyone says, do you think private equity buying up single family houses and local zoning and licensing fees? I wish you could have finished that question, Debate Anyone. Katie says, Trump or Kamala? What a weird question since, since the election's over. Angry Long Island Vet says, can you name 3 things Trump has done that is a positive? I absolutely cannot, because he has not done 3 positive things. Noah Ziggy says, can anyone on the left name one good thing Trump has done so far? I mean, he told his Treasury Department to eliminate the penny, but like, again, why do we need to do this? If somebody's stabbing me in the throat, do I have to mention that they have nice eyes? You know, it's like he's doing a lot of really, really, really bad things. He is ruining this country. He is ruining the globe. He is ruining people's lives. There are people who are here getting cancer treatments that ICE is just detaining, who are like legal citizens, and they're going to die earlier than before. He's stealing time from people's families for no fucking reason. It's not helping you or me to do this shit, you know? Alrighty, Jennifer for Best 51 says, Trump is for us. That is not a question, so that is a block. Again, I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but ask a question, be part of the conversation. All right, Long Island Vets says, hi, Ken. He gave you a platform still to be on TikTok and give you money for this. So I barely make any money from doing my live streams on TikTok. I do it because I believe in the gospel of unelecting every Republican. And as far as like Trump saving TikTok, he hasn't saved TikTok. He capitulated. He is letting China do whatever China wants. You know, he is completely weak on, international affairs. He's getting dog walked by Putin, by Xi, by Netanyahu. So, I don't know, like, I'm not going to give him kudos for saving TikTok when he didn't accomplish any goals. He is just ignoring a law that was passed by Congress and upheld by his Supreme Court, let's see here. Anger Long Island Vet says, bro, the Orange Mad Bad is not a good look, nor is it a winnable campaign strategy. Well, thankfully, I'm not running for office, Angry Long Island Vets. But crucially, you're not responding to anything that I'm saying, man. I'm giving you like legitimately bad things that Donald Trump is doing, and you are reducing my argument to Orange Man bad. No, Orange Man not bad. Orange Man ruining lives. Orange Man ruining economy. Orange Man separating children from their families. Orange Man detaining and deporting civilians who are here legally, citizens, people who have done nothing fucking wrong in their entire lives are now sitting in a fucking concentration camp, either fucking alligator Auschwitz or fucking COTS in El Salvador. Like, those are legitimately bad things. Let's see here. James Sufort says, you can't answer me. I didn't see your question. Poop says, why did you block me on Jerkmates? I don't have a Jerkmates account. Time Slayer says, they love Trump because with him as president, they don't have to think. Let's see here. Orange Man bad. We don't like him because he says mean things. Again, that is not what I'm saying in the slightest. So you are out of here. Let's see here. Drew Odin says inflation under Biden averaged 5.2% with a peak of 9.1%. It's currently 2.7%. Yes, Drew, that is accurate, but that's also what we call cherry picking information to further your argument. The inflation that we felt during the Biden administration was Trump's fault, Drew. And the Biden administration managed to get inflation from 9% back down to 2.4%. And so the fact that it is at 2.7%, again, after Biden was able to get it to fall, is a massive indictment of Trump. But if you decide to look at the averages of Biden's 4 years versus Trump's 6 months, then you are skewing the information to press your agenda, All right, Poop, congratulations. I don't care for you spamming the comments, so you are out of here. Alrighty, let's see here. Noah Ziggy says, always Trump fault, huh? Yeah, I mean, he did a lot of really bad things that caused a lot of damage. You know, if a kid comes into my house and breaks everything with a hammer, and then I start going around the house going, you broke the lamp, you broke the television, you broke the plate, would you then go, oh, so everything's the kid's fault? The kid broke everything. Yeah, he fucking did, you know? All right. Anthony De Loreto says Joe Biden deported more people than Donald Trump, and Trump didn't close the border. Anthony De Loreto, so I don't really know what the point is of that comment. Thick Boy Jabba says, in general, Trump has been a bad president across the board because he leads with hate. That is one of many reasons, Thick. Gator Dave says, what did he do? What did who do? Angry Long Island Vet says, you mean the same kind of hammers the FBI used on Hillary's cell phones? You know, Angry Long Island Vets, you have stopped being a productive member of this chat. Now you are just trying to get me to fight with you, and that is not what I do here. So ask a question or you're out of here. Happiest says, and he didn't skip due process or remove working undocumented. He 100% did, Happiest. Drew Odinson says Trump has got 1.6 trillion in foreign investments. That is all hypothetical, Drew. None of that has materialized, and many experts are saying it's literally never going to happen. Badger75 says, why are the generic polls so bad for Democrats? Misinformation and propaganda. Genji says, I don't know what will be of the Republican Party after Trump is gone. He's like Caesar. I think it's going to be wildly deflated. Ronaldo says, who has helped Palestine more, Trump or Biden? Biden, 1,000%. And Biden was terrible for Palestine. So that's just to let you guys know how bad Trump is, that Biden, who was terrible for Palestine, was better for Palestine than Trump currently is being. Triska fan says, I want to be your mod to clean up this chat. You know, Triska, I don't know you well enough, but I appreciate you being here, so maybe, you know, we'll see. Rick Zaraku says, having a present tell you to inject your veins with bleach during COVID. Anthony Delaredo says, host, you are correct. I know. Thank you for that, though. Angry Long Island Vet says, how does that make sense? Joe Biden was a top donor for Israel. Angry Long Island Vets, you know, a top donor for Israel. That doesn't really make sense. Joe Biden was donating money to Israel. Joe Biden was pushing back against Netanyahu. Donald Trump is not. Joe Biden did not call for ethnically cleansing Palestine, which did not give Netanyahu the green light to begin starving people there. The UN was distributing aid in Palestine during the Biden administration, and now it is an organization run by Israel that instead of having 200 aid locations, they have 4. So more people are dying. There is more acceleration towards ethnically cleansing Palestine. There is your answer, Angry Long Island Vet. Jay Daddy says it's who is less harmful for Palestine. No, not who is best for them, sadly. You know, Jay Daddy, I believe that if we vote for who is less harmful, every election will eventually get to somebody who's good for Palestine. Time Slayer says Trump and Yahoo are in the same boat, both evil. They both want to hurt people. I believe you mean Netanyahu, yeah. Rick Zarku says Trump is an idiot if you go back in history and look at some of the reels he said he'd run as a rep. I mean, I agree that he's an idiot. J Daddy says, yes, I agree. Just explaining for the chatters that don't get it. Yes, J Daddy, I'm with you. Alrighty, let's see here. Look at all the debt under Republicans versus Democrats. Clinton got us completely out of debt. J Daddy says, 110%, I like this guy. Well, I 110% like you, J Daddy. All right, Average Joe PG is back over on Twitch. I just hopped on. Did you happen to see that Netanyahu's mask finally came off completely regarding annexing Gaza? It doesn't seem like the rest of the world will do anything at this point. Thoughts? I think we are already starting to see Western society starting to push back and voting to grant Palestine statehood, which I believe would give them more coverage in the UN. You know, admittedly, it's probably not enough. I mean, the damage has been done, and you know, the people who are starving to death, doctors are saying like many of those people are never going to come back because of how far down the starvation road that they have gone. But we are starting to see the tide turn, both in how other nations besides America are regarding this issue, and also how people on the left, political leaders on the left, like Democrats in office and party leaders, are changing on this, and you know, public opinion is changing on this. So I would say that, you know, if America could count on voting based on this issue, then we would start seeing better policies regarding Palestine come out of America. But, you know, politics is it's a big, complicated stew. So who will? No one can say what will happen going forward. Fog War Productions. Do you think we should have a national intersports event like Canada has with the Canada Games? I'm not really sure. I don't know anything about that. Mm-mm-mm. Magra versa verse says, question, when we voted in December 2021 UN General Assembly that food isn't a human right, did we veto? I do not know, Magra versa verse. But I am not going to defend everything that America has done in the UN because I just don't believe that America has always acted well in the UN. Sig says, I don't think Trump likes what's going on. I think he has no choice. America is owned by Israel. Sig, we always have a choice. And Trump is supposed to be the guy who does whatever he wants, right? He's the guy that eschews all the regular channels. So why can't he stand up to Israel? You're giving him a pass because America is owned by Israel. Like, why not hold his feet to the fire? He said he was going to end the fighting over there, and it has only escalated. Sig says his first term he made deals to be there. Yeah, and look what's happened because of those deals. I think an argument could be made, and an argument that I believe in, Sig, that the deals that he made and the actions that he made during his first administration were directly, related to why October 7th happened. So yeah, what do you think about that? All right. Fog War Productions says the idea is essentially the Olympics, but between 55 states, territories, and DC. I mean, it could be fun, but honestly, we have some pretty big problems that we need to address before we start doing fun things in this country. Sig says even if Trump wanted it to stop, he doesn't have the power to stop it. I mean, he is president of the most powerful nation on earth. We send Israel a ton of money and weapons that he could use as leverage. Sig, it really seems like you are trying to run cover for Donald Trump right now. He said he was going to stop the war on day one. Why are you not holding his feet to the fire on this, Sig? Let's see here. We are no longer the strongest country in the world anymore, thanks to Trump. That's pretty accurate. I agree with that. Sig says, yeah, he loves power, so after January 6th, he made deals. Make sure he got back in as president. Sig, I don't know what you mean by that comment. Let's see here. Somebody with no name says, do you think Ghislaine will get a pardon? I mean, she already has benefited from teasing the Trump administration with a testimony that will be beneficial to him. They've already moved her from her old prison to one that's like nicer, to a minimum security club fed. And that should piss off everybody, like this is a notorious child sex trafficker that Donald Trump is cozying up to and trying to negotiate, fake testimony out of. Yeah, it's fucking bananas. And he's having the FBI, 1,000 FBI agents who could be out there protecting you and me, who could be out there catching criminals, are instead spending all of their time redacting Trump's name from the fucking Epstein files. Like, why aren't you all pissed off about this? Alrighty. Average Joe PG says, I don't have any hope that just giving them statehood will be enough to help in time. I completely agree with that, Average Joe, but it is a step in the right direction. Average Joe PG says, Epstein videos, like Mossad has Epstein videos of Trump, I mean. It's an interesting theory. I haven't seen any substantive data to suggest that is the case. Dan Blackroyd, great to see you again. She actually participated in some of the abuse, by the way. Trump pardoning her should horrify people. Completely agree with that. Bronze Bella says, and if GM doesn't cooperate with Trump, then she'll mysteriously fill in the blank. Yeah, potentially. Let's see here. Carmen says, wait, people cross the border and get sent to a concentration camp, but PDF files get sent to Club Fed? Yeah, it should be really infuriating to everybody. NJ Red says, agreed. Why aren't the Epstein files being released? Because Republicans are protecting Donald Trump, who is all over them. And the FBI, which is in league with Donald Trump, because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are Trump lackeys who are telling the FBI what to do, they are protecting Donald Trump and all the other PDF files that are friends with them, all right. Any known abuse that wasn't spoken about was participating in the abuse. Yeah, I think I generally agree with that. Sig says, I think Trump isn't doing anything because he made deals with Republicans to make sure he wouldn't. Sig, do you think that Trump is in the files? Because I sure do. Republicans take the most money from Israel. That is accurate, Sig. Chris Fazio says, why do we need 750 military bases? McCarthy era proves communism was never a problem. Yeah, I think that America's influence in other countries with our military bases is something that I would love to look at, and it is, I would love for the Pentagon to pass an audit on their budget. Seems like a really good move. Let's see here. Ask Why says, don't pretend Democrats aren't on the Epstein list. Ask Why. If they are, send them to jail. I don't fucking care. Release all the names, and Democrats and Republicans who are on there, they can all fucking go to jail. But I do not care for this idea that we only want to punish the Republicans that are on there, man. Punish everybody. Jaron, by the way, says, would you agree that we can only end poverty through global fiscal policy for human rights? I mean, I think that we can end poverty without that. I think that that would help a lot. But I don't think that that is, what do you call it, Jaron? I don't think that that's the only answer to the problem. Jason Job says, why didn't Biden release the files? For a couple of reasons, Jason Job. Number one, the Democrats did make 3 attempts to release the files that were blocked by the Supreme Court in 2019, 2020, and 2024. The Supreme Court, doing Donald Trump's bidding, delayed the release of that information because it would hurt him politically. Now, could Joe Biden have told the FBI director, Christopher Wray, to release the files? Technically, no, because there's supposed to be separation between the executive branch and the judiciary. What Donald Trump is doing now with having daily phone calls with Pam Bondi, the attorney general, and telling Kash Patel who to arrest and who to investigate is wildly unethical and completely goes against the separation of powers and checks and balances that America is supposedly founded on. So there is exactly one person who could have released that information, and it was the FBI director, Christopher Wray, who was appointed by Donald Trump and was a Republican. So if you'd like to know why Republican Trump-appointed Christopher Wray did not release the information, then you would have to ask Republican Trump-appointed Christopher Wray that question. Faded Signal says, you don't have any evidence he's doing that, you're just speaking the side of your head. I mean, I have plenty of evidence, Faded Signal, but you don't really give a shit about the evidence that I have. You just want to prove me wrong. Zero Toxic says, so you do not understand, separate your powers. The judiciary, the DOJ is an executive branch, not separate. That is wildly inaccurate, Zero Toxic. User a bunch of numbers says, you are incorrect. DOJ is part of the executive branch. Also not true. Nancy Pants says, what do you think of Israel? The country, it's fine. The leadership, terrible. Sig says, in my opinion, he is on the list. Anyone who says Trump wasn't on the list, never looking into Epstein. Let's see here, guys. So you guys are arguing in the chats that it's on a separate power. It is the power that your branch wants, a DOJ, not the judicial. But yeah, the president is not supposed to be having daily calls with the attorney general. Preet Bharara got fired as AG of the Southern District because he refused to accept Donald Trump's phone call because it would have been wildly inappropriate. So yeah, there you go, guys. Ryan says, I just joined. What party to support? Democrats. Chris Fazio says, any chance we can stop talking about Epstein and concentrate on world politics and how we are going to finish your question, Chris. Colton Sorensen says, what would you call yourself, your alignment politically? I'm a progressive. Paula says, wow, crazy how so many do not know how the government is supposed to work. I agree. Let's see here. Zero Toxic says, where is that in the Constitution? Where is that? A part of the executive branch, not judicial. But Zero Toxic, you don't care about it. I just gave you a perfectly good example of how there was supposed to be this separation between the Department of Justice and the presidency, and you don't really give a shit. Chris Fazio says, how are we going to survive another 1,000 years with all these different religions? Religions are fine. It's just extremism that's the problem. Biscotti says, can the Supreme Court reverse Trump's immunity? Potentially, but this Supreme Court is not going to. Sig says, the U.S. government will not allow it to come out because of the damage it would do to them. I mean, right now, only Republicans are stopping it from coming out, Sig. Faded Signal says, the president's job is to enforce the laws. How is he supposed to do that without contacting the Department of Justice? So the idea, Faded Signal, is that the president shouldn't tell the FBI and the attorney general who to go after. He appoints those people to their positions, and then they do their job. This is supposed to make it so that there isn't lawfare, so that the president doesn't just have the FBI go after their political enemies. It is the reason why Joe Biden didn't involve himself in any of the investigations into Donald Trump when he was president, because it is a very important wall that we have up between the Department of Justice and the executive branch. And what Donald Trump is currently doing, and what he did during his first term, was wildly unethical. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom, Sig says, yeah, just because it's them in charge when Democrats are in charge, there will be people blocking it still. No, Sig, I already told you that Ro Khanna was part of the Democratic coalition trying to release the Epstein files in 2019, 2020, and 2024. You can look it up. Google Ro Khanna, Representative Ro Khanna, Epstein files 2019. Chris Fazio says, are you sure you're okay with religions being not a problem by indoctrinating children? Listen, I'm not a religious person, but I believe that we have freedom of religion in this country, meaning that you can celebrate any religion that you like, so long as it does not infringe on the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of your fellow citizens. Now, does that mean that everything that every religion does is good? Absolutely not. And we should make them, obey the law regarding what they are allowed to get away with. Chris Fazio says, so why is Christmas a national holiday? Chris, I gotta be honest, I really don't have any interest in arguing the benefit or the net benefit or net harm of religions. Jason Job says, are you an atheist? No, I'm an agnostic. Colton Sorensen says, what's your political background if you have one? I did not study politics or know anything about politics until long after I graduated college. I waited tables for 12 years. I was a working class person, and I just started seeing all of these inequities, and I started seeing all this unfairness and all this unjustness in the system. And so I started doing research, and I was like, why is my healthcare so expensive? Why is my health insurance company allowed to just deny me coverage for things that I need? Why am I getting paid so little when the people that own the restaurants are getting paid so much? Why do the runners and the busboys of this restaurant make so much less than the waiters do, just because we are white and have the ability to speak English better? And I started looking at the policies that could potentially affect that stuff and bring about more justice and equity to this country. And the Democratic Party was always the ones that were doing the right things, and the Republican Party was always the ones that were doing the wrong things. And so I was like, okay, I'm a Democrat. And then I just started reading the news every day, and then I started and then I started becoming more of an expert in like the way the government works and who the various power players are, etc. Alrighty, thank you, Anthony. I appreciate you. Jason Job says, except for Obama. What does that mean? Sig says, I just think it's not a partisan issue. It's a publicity issue that would hurt both sides. Sig, I don't love any both sides argument, because there are these massive differences between the political parties. So if there are Democrats in the Epstein files, every Democrat is saying, release the files and let the chips fall where they may. Bill Clinton has said, and it's likely that he's in the files, Bill Clinton has said, release the files. And again, Democrats have a history of trying to get this information out there during the first Trump administration, during the Biden administration, and currently. So again, your argument that both sides are hiding this depending on who's in charge is factually inaccurate. Jason Job says, isn't Obama being investigated for treason on completely trumped up and fake charges, Jason Job? Let's see here. J-Sec Hodel says, those were different types of Democrats than the ones we have nowadays. J-Sec, I don't think that is accurate. Ricky Brotherton says, do you expect a power shift in the Republican Party before the next election? I do not. MAGA is fully enveloped in the Republican Party. It is Trump's party now. Rena, you're doing the Lord's work. Thank you so much for being here. Alrighty. Ryan DeWitt says, best news channel for the most accurate news. The only thing, Ryan, it doesn't really matter where you get your news from, so long as you get it from multiple sources, to try to avoid any kind of bias. But the one thing you need to do is avoid right-wing media, because study after study have shown that right-wing media is wildly inaccurate, and by some estimates only 20% accurate. So that is just bad. It is just bad. Don't get your news exclusively off of social media, and don't get your news from right-wing media. Those are the only two things you got to do. Rob Millward says, agree or disagree, a government that moves slow benefits the country the most. I mean, sometimes moving slow is the move, and sometimes moving fast is the move. Have you read Abundance, Rob Millward? Because they talk about that in the book. White Lion says, do you believe Israel is controlling our country? I believe that anybody who has a lot of money has a lot of influence in our country, and AIPAC is an extremely well-funded organization, so they have a lot of influence. But I do not believe that they are controlling our country. Ugh. Colton Sorensen says, what do you think about the left-wing populist movements like Democratic Socialists or the Young Turks? So I am a progressive, so Democratic Socialists and the Young Turks align with me politically on a lot of issues. I don't always agree with their tactics. The Young Turks specifically, they have a habit of ascribing blame to the Democratic Party for things that the Democratic Party is not doing, and being really unfair, I think, in their criticism of the Democratic Party, where I try to mitigate my criticism of the Democratic Party with a couple of things. The idea that, the fact that the Republican Party is way worse. The electoral systems are stacked against the Democratic Party. The media environment is stacked against the Democratic Party. And so, my criticism tends to get watered down because of those facts. Whereas the Young Turks and, they will say like, all the corporate Democrats, they just do their moneyed bosses bidding. And I'm like, that's a little hyperbolic and inaccurate, Now that being said, we have similar beliefs. And I think that anything, even if it is doing more harm than good, that's not what I meant. Even if they were, spending too much time harming the Democratic Party and not enough time motivating citizens to vote for the better of the two options, I still think it's better to have interesting progressives out there who are getting people interested in politics and keeping people engaged and informed. Prime Time says, did you just say the media is bad for the Democrats? You just lost any credibility. Prime Time, I do not believe that you have accurate information available to you, because the media environment is 100% stacked against the Democratic Party, and I will happily go into more detail on that if you like, but I don't think that you really want the detail. I think you just want to call me an idiot. Jason Hodel says, what do you think about raising interest rates slowly over time to try and help with inflation? I mean, that's what the Fed did, during the Biden administration, and it completely fucking worked, Let's see here. Period says, why can't anything be done when Trump is breaking the law or spending tax dollars on himself? Because right now, period, the only people who could hold him accountable are either Republicans or conservatives themselves. So all of Congress is controlled by the Republican Party, who are on board with all the illegal things that Trump is doing, or they're too scared of him to try to hold him accountable. The Supreme Court, again, either totally on board with what he is doing or too scared of him and his fan base to try to stop him. And it is one of a billion reasons why I think that we should unelect every single Republican in this country, from president to dog catcher. Laura Elizabeth says Democrats are statistically smarter than Republicans. So Laura, that seems a little mean. You are accurate that Democrats statistically have more education than Republicans, but just being educated does not mean that you are intelligent. There are plenty of people that graduate from Harvard who are, fucking idiots. Tanner says finding nonpartisan media is almost impossible. Tanner, that is why I recommend people get their information from as many different channels as they can, excluding, of course, right-wing media. All right. Triska says, why do you think the GOP is falling in line and acting scared to go against Trump? Because he has, for a couple of reasons, Triska. I think he has radicalized his fan base, and he has encouraged them to do violence. We have seen multiple examples of his base doing violence, and best case scenario, they don't do violence, they just threaten you with violence to the point where you have to buy private security like Mitt Romney did, and they call your house and they throw bricks through your window and shit like that. That's number one. There's also some politicians and some business owners and law firms and shit like that, they don't know how far down fascism we are right now. And so they're scared to fight back because they want to be on the winning side. And so Republicans that would have pushed back against Trump in the past are now like, well, I mean, if we're going to be Russia, I'd much rather be in the Putin circle than out the Putin circle because, I could potentially be sent to a fucking gulag in El Salvador. Alrighty, let's see here. Sig says, do you think Trump is actually in control, or did we not learn from Biden the president is just a face? So Sig, the president has influence, even if they aren't the one making the majority of the decisions. So, you could, Sig, make an argument that Biden's team did a lot of the policy decisions that ended up getting implemented in the Biden administration, but Biden was still the person who maintained our current relationship with Israel. That was not his progressive team that wanted that to happen. That was not the team that was breaking up monopolies and supporting unions and investing in green technology. All the reporting makes it look like Trump is having an effect on the government, but that Stephen Miller is our de facto president. So, yeah, he is sicking his dogs on his enemies, and he is letting the worst person in the country make decisions for the rest of us. So 100% it matters who the president is, Sig. TikToker says, not D or R, but Obama put people in cages outside in Arizona heat, so why did his voters protest Trump? TikToker, there is a big difference between the way that Obama handled immigrants and the way that Trump handled immigrants. What Obama was doing was trying to make the best of a bad situation while upholding the law. What Trump is doing is trying to be as mean as possible to punish people who are trying to come to this country for a better life. Cameron Hodge says, thoughts on the White House renovations? Trump's stupid. It's dumb. It's fucking, he's turning green areas into fucking Russian bloc architecture, brutalist shit. Like, it's just so fucking stupid, Shelling Seashells says, that's your perception, brother. They were the same. That is not my perception. That is a fact, Shelling Seashells. And if you would like me to go into more detail, I will, but I suspect that you don't really give a shit. Let's see here. Tweb says, but how does putting people in cages good either? I am with you, though, in general. So I don't remember the specifics because it was a long time ago. But basically what happened was they were bumping up against a law that said that you could not hold children for a certain amount of time, but you could hold their parents for a certain amount of time. And they were trying to mitigate an influx of families coming over the border with a massive wait time for asylum judges, if I'm remembering correctly. And so they separated the families for a time just so that they could fix whatever backlog was going on. And then they reunited everybody immediately. Trump administration, that is not what happened. What they did was they said, we want to separate children from their parents. And then they deported those parents, and then they lost them. Thousands of children became orphans because of the Trump administration in a move that was either wildly incompetent or barbaric, cruel on purpose. The Biden administration put a team together to reunite those families, and thousands of children were reunited with their families. But the Trump administration came in and they disbanded that team. So America's not even trying to find those children's parents anymore. There's a difference. Cameron Hodge says, will you ever run for any local or state offices? Probably not. Sig says, man, I can't even get started on Obama. This dude sent my father-in-law back after 15 years here. We had a lawyer. He has 7 kids, but they sent him back in 3 days after 15 years' time here. Was he not here legally, Sig? Let's see here. JAFO says, how many adults were not the real parents of the kids? What a weird question. David says, Obama didn't arrest people who were legal immigrants with green cards and work permits. That is another valid difference. Yeah, there's so many differences that I'm forgetting them, Abe says, how can we balance individual freedoms with the need for national security? I guess competent intelligence gathering instead of just, looking for the intelligence that proves your priors, the way the Trump administration is doing. Sig says, no, he was illegal, but the time we thought he would be able to fight for his rights to stay. That is a fucking massive bummer, Sig, and I'm really sorry to hear that. Um, and I have a thought experiment for you, Sig. Do you believe that the Obama administration really wanted to deport people like your dad, or do you believe that the Obama administration was doing that in order to compromise with Republicans on the issue of immigration? Let me know what you think about this. JAFO says, but it was a legit question. You know, as I was saying, as I was throwing you shade, JAFO, I recognize that there are probably some coyotes who come over with children to make it seem like they are their families and maybe get special treatment. You know, so yeah, the answer to that question is I don't know what those stats are, but a fact of the matter is that a lot of those children were separated from their actual fucking parents and are scarred for life because of it. San Juan says, will the media and Dems stop talking about Epstein and give Trump a pass like always? San Juan D, why should they? Because Donald Trump is actively trying to hide his connections to Epstein. Like, why should we give him a pass? Catastrophic Blues says the majority of deportations under Obama were repeat reentries after previous deportations. Sig says, yeah, I do. I don't think they cared. I don't think the government cares in general about immigrants. Let's talk about it more. Says, oh my God, just double speak. Everything is Republicans' fault. Let's talk about it more. If a kid came into my house and broke everything I owned with a hammer, and I started pointing out everything, like you broke my computer, you broke my TV, you broke the plates, would you then go, oh, everything's the kid's fault? You know? Alrighty, let's see here. Catastrophic Blues says he's definitely going to pardon her. We can all see it. I mean, he already moved her to a minimum security, club fed type of facility. So he's already doing favors for a notorious sex trafficker and abuser of children, you know. Daniel D says Trump said medicine went down 500%, 400%. So if $20 went down 500%, does it mean they owe me 80? It does. So I guess what we're trying to say, Daniel D, is that Trump is completely full of shit. Swiftly engaged, great to see you again. Says I've been seeing a lot of outrage at GOP town halls on TikTok. Do you think this will amount to anything? Yes, swiftly engaged, but it does not mean that people like you and me get to not do the work of accelerating what is happening. That is excellent evidence of public pressure working and information getting to the right people, but we need more. We need more of that. We need more of what is happening, and it's got to be people like you and me that make more happen. Kenny says, what state are you most knowledgeable in for politics? Statewide. Yeah, no, I'm not great statewide. You know, I lived in New York for 20 years, so maybe like that's my best state, but yeah, I am much more up on federal national politics, you know. Average Joe PG says, I read Lawless by Professor Leah Littman. She uses pop culture references to explain why she sees the Roberts Court as making decisions based on manufactured grievances. Amazing read. Average Joe PG, I love Leah Littman. I love Strict Scrutiny podcast. And I am eagerly looking forward to that book coming. I have ordered it already. Sig says Obama lied, making people feel safer while deporting anyone and everyone. Yeah, you know, Sig, I can understand why you might feel that way, and especially because this is an issue that was really important to you. I guess my main question is, you know, like we've been kind of going back and forth on the difference of the two parties. Do you think that the Democratic Party and the policies of the Democratic Party have in the past and are planning on the future of doing things that would help people like you? That's my number one question for you right now, Sig, is if you had to put money on which politicians had done things that helped you or will do things that will help you in the future, do you think it would be more the Republican Party or the Democratic Party? Abe says, what systemic failures let Epstein avoid justice for so long? I believe corruption. The fact that powerful people were involved with him, and there was a lot of blackmail content. And Donald Trump was friends with Alex Acosta, who gave him the sweetheart plea deal in Florida. So shit like that. Harvey James says the bans, if you're rich, Republicans or average Democrats, Democrats are helping more. I'm not sure what you mean by the bans, Harvey James. So yeah, let's see here. Daniel D says, this more fantasy, not reality at all. But who would win in a war, Texas or California? Oh, I don't know. Kind of a silly question. Thank you for being there. D Rock says, best book on geopolitics, please, sir. Ooh, there's an author named Ben Rhodes who wrote a book called The World as It Is, I think. He worked under the Obama administration. I would give that a read. Colton Sorensen says, how bad do you think the corporate lobby is in the Democratic Party? Are they still trustworthy? The corporate lobby in the Democratic Party is pretty bad, but it is still better than the corporate lobby of the Republican Party because the entire Republican Party is the corporate lobby. Where the corporate lobby affects the Democratic platform is watering down policies that would help the 99%. Where the corporate lobby helps the Republican Party is in adding nitro to the already rich aligned policies of the Republican platform. Flamingo Mo says, why do our neighbors have leaders with PhDs and we have a dumb cough? Because of misinformation and propaganda. You know, Flamingo Mo. David says, dream actors under Obama, 10K more sympathetic than anything Donald Trump has done. That is accurate, David. Elias says, do you think Israel owns us? No. People that have a lot of money own us and have a lot of influence in our government, and AIPAC has a lot of money, and therefore they have a lot of influence. Alrighty, let's see here. Harvey James says, I'm driving on speaker, not coming through right. All right, no hate, no Tito shade, Harvey James. Let's see here. Sig, still waiting for that response to my question, my guy. I hope that you are still here. Tweb says, do you see a blue shift in the midterms? You want to see it, but outside looking in, do you see it? So Tweb, there are a few forces that are trying to keep a blue wave from happening in 2026. If the information was getting out there and there was no rigging of elections or lying or subversion or gerrymandering, then there would be 100% a blue wave. But the billionaire class and the Republican Party are doing everything that they can to lie and cheat their way into, not losing any seats in the Senate or in the House, potentially building on their electoral power. But it is up to you and me to stop that, Tweb. It is up to you and me to do the work. So go to my Discord, check out my thread that's called The Work, and do that stuff. And then recruit other people to do that stuff, because that is the only way that we win the midterms, is if people do the work. All right. Sig says, for a while I thought Democrats, but they don't make changes to help get citizenship easier. Republicans don't either, so I don't prefer a party with that issue. I feel like the solution is making it easier to gain citizenship, not deporting or making it harder. Sig, the Democrats have been working on that. In fact, they worked on a bill with the Republican Party to do that during the Biden administration, but the Republicans filibustered their own bill that they wrote because they wanted to run on immigration as an issue in 2024. So, I know how frustrating it must feel to see Democrats try to do things and fail because of Republican filibusters or political pressure. Because the media environment is so skewed against the Democratic Party, they were able to elevate the issue of immigration and talk about how bad of a job Democrats were doing, letting everybody come across the border, and that Republicans were the only ones that were going to save us from this wave of immigrants. So Democrats had to equivocate how they spoke about that issue. But the track record of Democrats is way better on immigration than the Republican Party. DACA happened under the Democratic Party. DACA, the Dreamers were protected by the Democratic Party, where Republicans constantly were trying to throw them under the bus. So yeah, I know how frustrating it can be when we want progress to happen and it's not happening. But what I want people to remember is that the people who don't want there to be progress have a lot of money. And so they not only stop progress from happening, but they convince people to not vote. They convince people to vote for the people that will stop progress. They pay people to say that the left is bad, that the right is better, that both sides are the same. Imagine like a tug of war where one side is paying people on the other side to pull in the other direction, to argue about which direction they should be pulling in, and argue about this rope isn't going anywhere. pulling on this rope is stupid, So yeah, I get it. I get how frustrating this stuff can be, but yeah, if you dig into the details, if you pay attention, then you see the good people doing the good work. And the issue is that we don't have enough people supporting the good people, and we have too many people sitting things out, and we have too many people believing misinformation and propaganda. All right, Matt says Democrats are getting desperate to keep any power. Look at Texas. Matt, that's a really weird way of looking at Republicans trying to cheat to steal the midterm elections. Colton Sorensen says, I'm social democrat for votes. Do you think leftist infighting is too big, or are we not going left enough? I think the focus on the fighting is the problem. I don't think that there's any problem with people having good faith disagreements about policy, where the centrists want to argue with progressives about what the policy should be. The issue that I have is in spending more time criticizing the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. The analogy that I always use is imagine that you run a 7-Eleven and you are yelling at kids for reading magazines instead of buying them while somebody is stabbing you in the neck. I think we need to focus on the main issue, which is unelecting every Republican. And then once we've accomplished that, once we have made it so that Republicans finally feel an electoral consequence for all the fucking bullshit they have put us up, they've forced on us over the last 50 years, then finally we can start actually getting into the nuts and bolts of, okay, which areas should we be doing progressive policies and which areas should we be being more conservative on, shit like that. Costco says, so it seems like both parties are the same because their funding is the same, but they're not the same, Costco. Republicans get more billionaire money. They get more APAC money. The policies of the Republican Party are more in league with the billionaire class. Donald Trump has more billionaires in his cabinet than any president in history. The outcomes are different. The politicians are different. The platforms are different. They're different, Costco. Let's see here. Julian says, are the disagreements fabricated? Some of them are, and some of them are not nearly as heated as they actually are. Like some of the infighting is overhyped on social media. Marcia says, explain in layman's terms what is happening. So, in Texas, asks Marcia. What's happening in Texas is called gerrymandering, where politicians pick their voters instead of voters picking their politicians. So imagine, you live in an apartment complex and everybody's going to vote on if the apartment complex is going to get pizza or burgers. And if you ask every individual person living in the apartments, then the vote would go for pizza. But the burger lobby is extremely powerful, and so they decide, oh, we're not doing this by person, we're doing this by apartment. And if you go by, one apartment per each vote instead of one apartment for each one vote for each person, then all of a sudden the burger lobby wins. So that's basically what gerrymandering is. All right. Sig says, I hate having to choose between two parties. Neither side really seems to care. We need to destroy them. I disagree with that, Sig. I think that there are really good people in the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic platform is the platform that would help people. And, they are not flawless, and there are definitely bad people in the Democratic Party. But I believe in voting for better over worse. And if you have seen information that has convinced you that neither side really seems to care, then I would ask where you get your information from, because I pay very close attention to politics and I see good people doing good work all the time. Alrighty, let's see here. Marcia, I hope that was enough of an explanation for you. Sig says we need more options so we can get someone who cares that megacorps can't control so easily. So Sig, instead of trying to build up support for a new party, why don't we just primary the politicians that are currently in the current parties? Why don't we get better Democrats and Republicans elected in the primary and then get to vote for them in the general election instead? What do you think about that? John Scholl says, how did we get here? Billionaires did a whole bunch of bullshit. That is how we got here. Let's see here. Mia's LV Adventure says, do you like Gavin Newsom? He's not my top choice. He's fine, is what I usually say. Better than every single Republican. Let's see here. Swamp Stomper says, third is the way. Third is the way to throw your vote away, Swamp Stomper. Let's see here. Badger75 says Democrats need to gerrymander like Texas. I mean, ideally, we could get gerrymandering to end if people voted for Democrats, because then they would pass a bill that says gerrymandering is illegal. Michael Utz says both parties are owned by Israel. That is inaccurate. Let's talk about it more. It says, I'm an independent and I can't tell the difference between either party, either to right or to left. Let's talk about it more. First of all, your spelling is terrible. I am sus of anybody who spells to the way that you spelled to in that sentence. But the difference between the parties is massive. It is massive in outcomes, both on the state and federal level. It is different in the platforms. If you want me to go into more details, I will. Let's talk about it more. But to be honest, I don't think you really give a shit. But prove me wrong. Prove me wrong and engage with me in good faith, and I will show you how the parties are different. Alrighty, let's see here. Swamp Stopper says real change means change the way people vote third party is the better way than reforming broken. Swamp Stopper, do you think that without ranked choice voting, a third party candidate could ever win? Answer me. Jumbo Papa says, how do you spell political? You fucking nailed it, guy. Let's see here. Patty says, do you think there's an intentional reason mainstream media didn't cover the recent CEO assassination? Probably they don't want there to be more. They don't want it to be a growing trend, and so they saw the way that whoever killed the United Healthcare CEO was lionized. We don't know if it was Luigi Mangione. He has not been accused of anything, and honestly, he was hanging out with me the entire time, so I don't think he was. I don't think he's guilty. So yeah, they do not want more of that. They do not want more people to lionize billionaire assassinations. Julian Duchess says, do you think Kamala should have been in more interviews media? Kamala Harris had 100 days to mount a presidential campaign that people normally take over a year to plan. I think she did the fucking best that she could. And, I'm sure that there are some good faith criticisms that you can make, but with 100 days, I think that all the mistakes that she made were perfectly reasonable. Susan Zucker says Democrats gerrymander. That is inaccurate, Susan. Democrats do retaliatory gerrymandering, but it was the Democratic Party that was trying to make gerrymandering illegal, and Republicans filibustered it. So if you want to get rid of gerrymandering, you gotta vote for Democrats. Scrolling down to the bottom, Roman Congress has still got my Harris wall sign in the garage. It should have been on your lawn, my guy. Maga Versa says Mangione wasn't charged. Nice. Wasn't he? I'm pretty sure he was charged. He just hasn't been found guilty. Colton Sorensen says, what do you think about the CEO assassinations? Is it justified? Is it not? So I'm not sad when a billionaire or a multimillionaire CEO, especially one who's in charge of health insurance, which is, them buying boats off of denying kids their cancer treatments, I'm not sad about it. I don't condone any kind of violence, be it against humans or animal or property. I believe that the way that we make substantive change is through non-violent work. But I'm not sad about it. Billionaires have made the calculation that we can all fucking die so that they can have one more fucking boat and one more fucking plane. They are making decisions that are giving you and me cancer and that are harming the people that we love and care about, just so that they can have one more fucking boat and one more fucking house. They have told us that we do not matter. And so I don't mind saying back to them, well, then you don't fucking matter to me then, and I'm not going to be sad about it, Alrighty, let's talk about more. It says they've already held complete control of the government before, but never stopped gerrymandering. Let's talk about it, Mo. That is pretty inaccurate, I would say. So again, let's talk about it, Mo. I don't think that you care about any of the details I'm going to give you. I don't think you're going to change your mind. I think you just want to come on here and prove that you are right about being cynical about the government. Let's see here. Because, yeah, you're not asking any questions. You're not saying that you're going to engage with me in good faith. All you're doing is putting your cynical talking points. Yeah, you're not asking questions. Yeah, you're out of here, man. If you don't ask a question, then you're out of here. I really do explain, please. Okay, so yeah. So in order to get anything done in the Senate, you need a filibuster-proof majority or 60 votes. The only time in recent history where Democrats were able to do that was in 2008. they had a filibuster-proof majority by 0 seats. They had exactly 60 seats in the Senate. And one of those seats was an independent named Joe Lieberman, who was not going to do anything that the Democratic Party told him to do. They needed to go negotiate with him the same way the Biden administration needed to negotiate with Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema during their term. So 8 months of a very fragile supermajority. So what do the Democrats decide to do? They could potentially decide to make it illegal to gerrymander. Only problem is that gerrymandering exploded in 2010 after the Democrats lost their supermajority. There was gerrymandering before, but it was wildly worse after 2010, spurred on by the threat of the first black president. The Republican Party, the billionaire class, put things into fucking overdrive to torpedo his campaign, to torpedo his agenda, and start dismantling the government. Read Dark Money by Jane Mayer. So that's number one. Could they could they protect Roe versus Wade with that? In that 8 months that they had that supermajority, maybe. But I don't really think they could have, because again, they needed every single Democrat, and not every single one of those 60 Democrats was pro-choice. And not every single one of them was, even if they were pro-choice, was willing to take the political risk of voting for an amendment to, or voting for a law to, to protect Roe versus Wade in a state where that could have lost them the re-election. And additionally, we thought that Supreme Court precedent was going to protect Roe. So we didn't think it was necessary to waste all of our political capital on protecting Roe. But what they did instead, they passed the Affordable Care Act, which saved fucking lives. I know people love to fucking shit on the Affordable Care Act, but it saved lives. And it made it illegal for health insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. So that's what they did. That's what they did with their 8 months. Could they have done more if they had more seats, if they had more time? Absolutely. And I believe that they would have. But that's what they did. Alrighty. Crazy Monsoon says, do you act as well as do comedy? I do. Let's see here. JFO says, why is it so hard to get term limits for senators and congressmen? Because people do not vote for senators and congressmen who have said that that is what they're going to do, JFO. If you and me go out there and we find the candidates who say that they're going to do term limits and then we help get them elected, then we will suddenly get them. There is a disconnect in people's brains between what happens in our country and the people that we vote for. Because everybody that is currently in power in this government is there because people voted for them. If you don't want politicians who are owned by AIPAC, then vote for politicians that aren't owned by AIPAC, like Jamal Bowen and Cori Bush, who lost their re-election because AIPAC funded their competitors. If you want gerrymandering to end, then vote for politicians that are trying to end gerrymandering, aka the Democrats. But people didn't. And so now we have gerrymandering. Right, Short Stack says, tell me in only a sentence what the Bill of Rights effectively does. Good things. Sig says, speaking facts right now, you have to make sure you pay attention to who you're voting for. Completely agree with that, Sig. I forget where we left off our conversation, but I'm really glad that you're here, my guy. MAGA Versiverse says the Affordable Care Act was the incremental change needed to get us to Medicare for all. I mean, I agree that we need Medicare for all. I agree that it was positive incremental change, but I still think that we have a long way to go. MAGA Versiverse, and one of my new rants is getting people to recognize that even if the government was 100% Bernie Sanders's, it would still be difficult to switch over to universal health care. We should do it, but it will be hard. And it was going to be hard not only because the Republican Party is going to try to torpedo it, and the billionaire class is going to try to torpedo it, but it's going to be hard just because it's going to be hard. There's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot. Let's see here. Average Joe PG, sorry that I've been spending so little time with you today. Question, how likely do you think it is that Dems will vote to ban gerrymandering once they start wielding it for power? So Average Joe, the Democrats already have done some gerrymandering in the past in order to stay competitive. And I give the Democratic Party a lot of allowances for doing things that Republicans do just to stay competitive, like taking corporate PAC money, taking donations from billionaires, from AIPAC, and gerrymandering, for example. But I do believe that if we give Democrats enough votes in the federal government, that they will end gerrymandering and they will restore the parts of the Voting Rights Act that have been nullified by the Supreme Court, and they will end Citizens United. We just have to give them enough votes to get those things done. 6 is, how do you feel about Democratic Party not listening to the party, only picking who they want? So Sig, there are a bunch of things that you could be referring to there, where you might be referring to 2016 and 2020, where the DNC put their finger on the scale to support Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. You could be referring to Kamala Harris being put as the nominee in 2024. In all of those situations, I believe it's a little overstated to say that the Democratic Party does not listen to us and only picks who they want. I don't think that the DNC should be putting their finger on the scale for specific candidates. Now, that being said, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden won their primaries by such wide margins that I don't even think that what the DNC did made that big of a fucking difference. Now, as far as like replacing Joe Biden with Kamala Harris, there was not enough time to have a new primary. That was the best possible scenario that we were handed. So, normally, 99.99% of the time, the DNC has as their nominee the person that the voters choose in the primary. And, sometimes they try to hype up certain candidates that they like better. I don't think they should do that, but they do that. And, it ultimately comes down to the voters, Sig says, I am talking about those things that made me upset because I believe the party wanted someone else. I feel like Bernie should have been the candidate in 2016. Sig, I completely agree with you. I canvassed for Bernie in 2016. I canvassed for Elizabeth Warren in 2020. And then when she dropped out, I canvassed for Bernie. And then Biden won. And Hillary Clinton won. That's just what the voters did. That was not the DNC. That was American voters. People like you and me who decided that they wanted Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, or they wanted Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders for whatever reason. Maybe they liked them better. Maybe they thought they were safer picks. But being in a democracy with 330 million people means that we need to make room for people that don't 100% agree with us. And so just because you and I would have much rather had Bernie Sanders be the nominee in 2016 and 2020, there are millions of other Americans who disagreed with us on the left. Millions of other Democratic voters disagreed with us. And they either liked those candidates better, or they just thought they were safer picks against Donald Trump. Alrighty, let's see here. MAGA versus apparently Pelosi and Schumer both wanted an open convention. That's interesting. I haven't heard that reporting, MAGA versus. I'm not sure if it's true, but here's what I would say in response to that. There were 2 states governed by Republicans. One was Ohio, and I forget what the other one was, that told the DNC, if you do not give us the name of your nominee before the convention, we will not put their name on the ballot. So the Republican Party was kind of forcing the Democrats to not have an open a primary at the convention. Mia's LV Adventure says, do you use politics in your stand-up? 100%. Kay says, but we've learned that a woman is never a safer pick in this country, sadly. Kay, I don't 100% agree or disagree with you. I think that a lot of people feel that way, like, America is too misogynistic or racist to vote for, certain types of people. And I don't know if that's accurate, because we elected Barack Obama in 2008, and I believe that we could, elect a Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris in the future, an AOC in the future. But I completely understand being worried about that, because of how, America has treated female candidates in the past. Colton Sorensen says there's a lot of sexism, but I mean, Kamala nearly won with a Rush campaign. Completely agree. And depending on if you want to extrapolate from that Rockland County case, potentially she did win. Sig says, do you think the parties would use systems they use in other countries to control elections here? Do you think the parties would use systems they use in other countries to control elections here? Oh, it's an interesting question, Sig. It kind of feels a little conspiracy theory-ish. Like, I do believe that America tries to influence elections in other countries, but that's more the purview of like the CIA, I think, than the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. That being said, what's up, Turning Worlds? Good to see you again. Local guy on the internet. I see your anti-Semitism loud and clear. Yeah, that being said, like, there is a cabal of billionaires that try to affect global politics using their billionaire money to forward more authoritarian, libertarian, ideals that they can become the new aristocrats lording over us, working class serfs. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of thin, Sig, but I hear you. I hear you. Sig, if you are at all interested, I would recommend you read a book called Dark Money. That is one of the most eye-opening books about contemporary politics that I've ever read. So please check it out, I would say. Colton Sorensen says, do you have a stream schedule? I want to talk more. I do, Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. But you could also email me. You can DM me, Colton. My project of organizing and educating and unelecting every Republican, it does not end when the stream ends. It is 24/7. And so if there are things that I can do to engage with people to get them a part of this crusade, then I will fucking do it. All right, Christian says, let's game it out. I don't know what that means. User a bunch of numbers says, was RGB's refusal to retire the reason many of our problems today, abortion rights and others? Yes, user a whole bunch of numbers, but sometimes I feel like we kind of, hindsight is 2020, as they say. And everybody believed that Hillary Clinton was going to win that election. And so everybody thought that it was a perfectly safe thing for RGB to do. All right, let's see here. Christian says, you sound like a YouTuber called Let's Game It Out. Very similar to, I'm not, but thank you, I guess. JFO says, do you think we could get another Ross Perot type candidate? I mean, we already have had, billionaires inserting themselves into politics as spoiler candidates. User a bunch of numbers says, what are your opinion on Mark Cuban and his cost-effective drug initiatives? I am not a fan of any billionaire existing. That being said, Mark Cuban gets a lot of credit for me for, number one, being a strong anti-Trump billionaire, and also for setting up a website to deliver people low-cost medication. Like, it is such an obvious fucking one-to-one, where he gets like a penny a day and everybody else gets cheaper medicine. Like, what the fuck, So yeah, let's have the kind of policies where no billionaire exists, but I gotta choose one. Like, I'll choose the good ones, like Cuban and Gates and shit like that. And also, I know that Gates is probably in the Epstein files. I'm talking about his initiatives to like delete malaria and support women. Sig says the dark money in politics is why I fear for both parties not valuing their voters. Sig, 100. You got to read that book. You got to read Dark Money because it is so fucking clear what I'm talking about here. Where it's like the Democratic Party is making a strategic choice that it will be harder for them to win elections without billionaire money. And the country will be better with them in charge, even if the billionaire influence on their policies means that we don't get everything that we want. But wait a second, you saying that you read it already? Sig? What? Where is this comment? I see it pinned here. How the fuck do I read the whole fucking thing? I have read it, and to be honest, it was a great book and part of why I have such a skeptical view. But Sig, didn't you get from that book that the billionaire class is specifically targeting the Democratic Party? Didn't you get that their project is electing Republicans? Doesn't that mean anything to you that the entire book was about, elevating Republicans and Republican talking points and denigrating the Democratic Party, even if there are some Democrats that take billionaire billionaire money, Sig? Like what does that mean to you, my guy? Doesn't that give you some hope that if we elect enough Democrats, they can stop that kind of money for influence scheme? Because that's their policy platform. And maybe if the billionaires are trying to stop Democrats so much, maybe it's because the Democrats are committed to ending that scheme. Like, isn't that how you felt about that reading that book? That's what I thought, you know. Sig says, yeah, it does, but I don't know if I believe it can actually happen. Do you think it won't happen because you know, honestly, I'm at almost an hour and a half, so I don't know if I can I can continue down this thread, Sig. But let's just suffice to say that it has happened in the past, and if we do the work of electing better politicians in the primary and in the general, then it will happen again. And the cynicism of thinking that it can't happen is what the billionaire class wants. They want you to give up. They want you to throw your hands in the air and say, well, I guess we're all fucked. Guess I'll just fucking till the fields for these motherfuckers and then die at the age of 30 while they get to eat fucking lobster and caviar 3 fucking meals a day. And I am not going to give them the gift of my pessimism and cynicism. I am going to do the work to try to remove them from power and remove their fucking Republican buddies from power and remove their complicit Democrats from power and elevate the kind of Democrats that are doing the work to stop the billionaire class and to help fucking people, you know? Not to help fucking people, but to help people. You know, emphasis, fucking emphasis. Alrighty. I'm not giving up hope because this is America and I have kids that deserve a good life. Thank you, Sig. I appreciate that. So yeah, you know, I will see you guys later. I gotta start wrapping things up. Official Not Brian says, name one Republican you don't dislike. I mean, I dislike them all because trickle down economics is fucking bullshit. But you know, I'll give you a John McCain. So yeah, everybody, if you got any questions, DMs are open. I appreciate all the support you give me, whether it is the free kind or the paid kind. If you want to support financially, you can, but you don't have to. I have a Patreon you can join. Find it on my website, jaredbernstein.com. I've got a store that you can buy things from. Find that on jaredbernstein.com/store. You can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. I actually just passed my monetization goal on Twitch, so I think there are more avenues to send me money on Twitch than there ever have been before, everybody. We're very excited about that. And let's see here. What else? I already told you guys my schedule, Monday through Friday, starting at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And yeah, check out my Discord also because I have listed on my Discord things that you can do to help fight against what is currently going on. And the link to my Discord is in my bio on my TikTok, and I'm pretty sure is on my bio in other places as well. Sig says, "Yeah, I'm trying to build enough wealth to help fight it." But you don't need to, Sig. It is the work of fighting this is free. It just needs time, you know. All right, everybody. Let's see here. Any final thoughts? Local guy on the internet. Yeah, I see your anti-Semitism, guy. And you know, I almost never bother to block people on Twitch because it's a hassle. But I'm gonna block you because I don't fucking truck with anti-Semites. All right, everybody. Have an excellent rest of your Tuesday. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.